Hey guys, Kid here. Like I said in my prior video about Ascent Worlds, I was going to review some of the cards spoiled already. As of July 7th, this is on shoutoutyourdecks.com on their spoiler list here. I'm using that as reference. So these are the cards that have been spoiled so far, or at least that they have listed here. I'm going to go through just the ones that kind of stood out to me when I first read them a few times. This doesn't mean like if I skip over a card, it doesn't mean like the card's bad or anything. It just might have not like spoke to me essentially initially, or like I felt like there was a really strong reason to talk about the card. But I'm just going to kind of go through this as quickly as possible, and then provide you guys with my thoughts. So one of the first cards that I thought was kind of interesting, worth talking about here, is Spellword Scepter. This basically is a regalia that makes it so that in a lot of times I assume here is that it's supposed to be set up so that whatever your finishing spell is will not be able to be negated in like a counter war like if you're both playing blue decks, we don't have to worry about counter wars and stuff like that. This is an interesting card. This is probably going to be more of, depending on like how the meta resolves out. This is like a very good sideboard card at best, I feel like, unless like we know for a fact going into the meta everyone's going to be playing some kind of counter spells. Then this could be a main deck card in a lot of decks that want to win through spells, essentially. But one thing about this card, I think it's not as good as maybe some people like initially first read. First of all, it comes in hindered, which means it's set up to know that your opponent's trying to either set up the kill the following turn, essentially. So you'll have to start working or forcing them into awkward scenarios, or you need to all in that specific turn to try to win the game there. Which sometimes that's all you really need to do. Because this comes in hindered. The fact that it comes in hindered too, which means you can't put this on a QSG to surprise people at all, because since it comes in hindered, it means you won't be able to crack it on the turn it comes into play. So in a way, I almost feel like this is a really bad counterspell or like protection, essentially for you. It's going to be good. I don't want to say it's bad. It's probably going to be good. I think it's going to be an okay sideboard card. I think I would be kind of surprised if this is going to be in a lot of people's main decks. Maybe the first week or so of people testing and they think they need this, but I think as the meta pans out, this will probably disappear or not even be played at all for the most part, and only in the sideboards, like I said. When you're in this like blue versus blue matchup, we're both playing counter spells, and I need a way to protect my win the game spell essentially. There are some big payoffs cards too in this set where you get to like draw a bunch of cards and stuff. I could see this being in combination with that card. You're gonna get ready to basically draw like a bunch of cards. This card with Lost in Thought, for example, in like mill decks where you're just like, I'm going to crack Spellword Scepter and then play Lost in Thought for like 5, and you're like, okay, I can't counterspell a draw 5, is kind of insane. So in some cases, I could see that happening, this being a good way to protect those spells. But a lot of times, too, in those weird scenarios, too, especially when I was playing Dialchan a lot, I used the Lost in Thoughts to bait out people's counter spells because I already had set up, victory in my hand, essentially. So it'll be interesting to see how this card actually ends up panning out at the end of the day. Enfeebled Dagger, this card is kind of interesting. I don't think it's that amazing, but I think it's still a card worth looking at. A lot of times you're either only going to play this if you're Astral Traded, obviously, or if you're playing the new Divine Relic that lets you play distortion cards without having the element. Card's interesting because it plays like the Frost Wand, which was I played a lot of Dialchan, and that's kind of part of the reason why I don't think I really care for this card too much. I don't think it's as powerful as maybe some people might come off in the beginning, but I could actually be completely wrong. It's interesting because it subtracts 3 damage from a unit, so it'll do better into units that want to swing multiple times in a turn. I don't know how many units really do that too often. It's mostly like wind ally type of decks, I feel like, because they do have that attack that stands other allies. So I could see that being pretty useful in those decks as well. But it's kind of like I said, it's almost like this is a generic Wand of Frost or Frost Wand or whatever that regalia is called in water for cleric that essentially costs 0. The downside to this, though, is unlike the wand, this doesn't draw you a card. This just deals an extra damage to whichever unit you point this at, which is probably good enough. The fact that it costs 0 makes it kind of more fair, I guess. I'm not really impressed by this card too much, but it's a very interesting card to now consider that if people are playing that new Divine Relic, they'll have access to this card. So you have to be considerate that this card exists. This can be put under QSG and stuff like that, and it can just be a surprise factor out of nowhere where you just suddenly lose the game because you didn't keep in mind about this card. Inert Sword is interesting too, only because it's a distortion traded, which means this can kind of go into any anyone's like material deck if they're playing that. Like I said, once again, playing the new Divine Relic. Class bonus is obviously really, really good. You'd prefer this to playing Guardian, but a 2/2 sword that is basically free, that doesn't cost anything to swing, unlike the Bulwark sword or something like that. I forget the name of that other sword. Is another interesting card you keep in mind. A lot of like spellcasters and stuff like that. If they are playing some type of weapon like this or something, it's kind of just used to pick away at allies that you don't want to waste spells on. And because if you're a spell heavy deck, you won't always have access to a lot of spell removal. With the way this game works right now too, there's not a lot of really good board wipes at all that exist in this game, unless you're playing like Astra pretty much and playing Arisana or something, or I guess Diana soon. It'll be interesting to see if this gets played that much. I could see it going either way. This card will either be really, really good or really, really trash, depending on how everything comes out. I think the next card that's like really scary in this sense is the Necklace of Hindsight. I like this card because I'm a huge control player fan. I one of my favorite decks in MTG ever is Lantern Control, and this is like some spooky stuff where it's like Jace the Mind Sculptor, Lantern Control type decks going on here. If you're ever in a position where you think it's even or you're slightly losing, and someone drops Necklace of Hindsight on you and pops it, and then looks at the top 4 cards of your deck and just like, yeah, you can keep these like 4 cards on top of your deck, or like multiple cards on top of your deck, you kind of know it's over from there, especially if they're playing control deck. That means your next draws are just absolutely abysmal, and they're not going to impact the game at all, which means that they know they're kind of clear to go through and do whatever they want from there. So this will be a really interesting card to see how it gets played out. The fact that once again, it's a distortion traded regalia, meaning that if they have almost any deck can play this if they play the new Divine Relic. I wish I could talk about this, but I don't play enough Crux. So, you guys out there, let me know how good this sword is. Looking at it, it probably is really good. Just, letting you attack again is pretty busted. So let me know what you guys think about that. I'm very curious about that. This is another card that I'm very interested in on how it's going to end up playing out. Devious Welcome, like, first read seems very, very powerful, but at the same time, it could be just completely a waste. The fifth one is like you have to play it. You can only play this during your opponent's recollection phase, which means that you don't get to see your draw or you don't get to basically use your draw for the most part until your opponent gets their chance to use it. And depending on how the meta shapes up to be, this card could be really, really powerful or really, really weak. One of the big things about this against like control decks versus control decks, this card probably sucks a lot because even if I play nothing that turn, the way this card is worded, that is if I have nothing in memory, that means I only discard 1 card, which means I still go card neutral, essentially. So I get a hand filter. You basically provided me a hand filter that I get the most knowledge possible before I have to discard, right? And if you happen to choose incorrectly, where like you say, ally, expecting not to play against any allies in like a matchup, and suddenly I play an ally, now I've got up cards, and thank you, like why did you do that? But at the same time too, depending on how the meta works out, if there's a lot of really controlling ways to stop either people from getting big hand sizes or from playing specific things, this card can become very, very devastating very, very fast. So I'm very interested to see how this card will kind of pan out and how people end up playing with this card. Like I said, I think this card can go either way on how busted it could be. It's either going to be really broken or it's going to be not played type of deal is what I'm feeling right now. And these are the type of cards that scare me the most, because if they turn out to be broken, that's when things in the game are going to get really, really not fun for people, because no one at the end of the day likes discarding cards, especially when it's at random. But like I said, one of the best quote unquote counterplays to this, if you can't do the specific thing they ask for that turn, is especially if you're a more of a fast, your deck plays more on your opponent's turn, you just can kind of ignore it and just use it as a free filter for yourself. Especially against fractals too. Now I'm thinking about this more too. Is like you don't really ever put anything in memory unless you have to. So the fact that if you're playing against like a fractal deck, it doesn't matter what you say against them. They, a worst case scenario is they filter a card. Like that's it. And so this card could, like I said, could be busted or not. It'll be interesting to see how this card turns out. This card is the first time I read this card, I was like, what the heck? Like, this is insane because you get to pick the cards that get banished from your material deck. So, for example, if you're playing all 3 baubles in specific matchups, 2 of the baubles are useless. Now now they become an extra draw whenever you draw a Fluffy Shopkeeper. But one of the big things, obviously, I think a lot of people realized early on is that this enables Arisana's infinite combo, like essentially 2 turns quicker. 2 turns quicker because you get to banish 2 Regalia out of the deck to be able to summon that last thing sooner rather than later, which will be nice. That's not counting any other ways to cheat out, like level 3s and stuff like that, where you materialize extra cards before this. The fact that this card exists and it's a 1/3 intercept, I think this is going to be a really, really interesting card, and to see if Arisana players are going to maybe like. One of the ideas I was having was like maybe lean more towards blue, playing control. We just sit there, dirtle all game. We're only playing literally for the infinite combo to win the game. And we just play 4 of this, a lot of good intercepts and other things like that, things to cheat out materialized cards and stuff like that, just to get to our win condition quicker. Because at the end of the day, you don't need that many bolts to win the game when you go infinite. So yeah, like it's going to be very interesting to see how this card plays out. Outside of that, I'm interested too to see how this card will play into other decks. Because like I said, if you already know your materialization deck has cards that are just going to be dead cards at some point, this is a good way to, if you have room in your deck, you can swap, play some of these in, and then banish away the things that are useless in the matchup because you just don't need them. Sometimes I materialize things when I was playing Diao Chan just to fracturize it, even because it was useless in the matchup. I would just be like, here's the bauble that I know I'm not playing against fire, but I pulled out fire bauble, fracturize it so I can get that extra, reservable out of that at least, essentially. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to see how Fluffy Shopkeep ends up playing out. I think this is going to be a really, really powerful card, and I recommend, picking up 4 of these. It's only a rare, so pick up 4 as soon as possible, I feel like. Next card here. This card I personally think is insane. One of the reasons I think this card is, I personally think this is like going to be one of the stronger cards in the set, whether it be now or later. Especially kind of what the feeling I'm getting from this set is that they're looking to really give you better payoffs for being level 3. And so we can get out of this weird meta where everyone's like, I'm staying at level 1 and that's it. Because there's very little decks right now that actually go to level 3 and have the payoff needed to be like, wow, this was a really good, investment to go to level 3. There's very few decks right now. It's like Tristan, Luck, not Faiza. What's his name? The other assassin guy. My brain's shut off right now. Genbu, or not Genbu, Gojira or whatever. Those are decks that like have decent enough payoffs and reasons to go to level 3. Whereas other decks, in the HVN meta didn't really have any reason to go past level 1 for the most part. So Liminal Guide is going to be a really interesting card for any deck that goes beyond level 1. One of the big things too I'm afraid about this card is that any decks that are self-milled decks, they hit the high roll. Like for example, this is why I think Genbu going into DTR is going to be a really, really strong powerhouse because of some of the cards they're putting in this set. I think are really broken for the deck. Liminal Guide being one of them, because it's free to go into level 3 Gojira. A lot of the time when you flip to the turtle or whatever, beast you decide to flip into, suddenly you go to level 3, you heal 3, like summon 2 to 3 of these guys from the grave, and then suddenly you draw 3 as well, and have 3 bodies on the board. You go up 3 cards. I think one of the biggest, well, maybe not the biggest mistake, essentially, but one of the things about this card is I do feel like it probably should have been a unique ally, just so you couldn't get like multiple of them on the board off of a level up to level 3. But yeah, at the same time too, when you have this guy in the graveyard, you can consider like you're cycling a card in when you play for cost instead now, because you essentially lose a card in your hand. Let's just say you don't have floating memory. you pay with stuff in your hand. It's like you faked played this card from your hand and drew a card for playing this card from your hand. So you go up in hand. I don't want to say go up in hand, but you essentially go even in hand, but you still go up like bodies on board, which is really big. So I can foresee this card going is being absolutely insane in some decks, especially decks that are self-milling a lot. And I'm kind of scared for like if you are experienced in like MTG and stuff, dredge decks and just anything to do with graveyards are very scary sometimes. And cards like this that exist in the graveyard and interaction like this, these are the types of cards that do eventually get banned because of how powerful they are. And I could foresee this being really, really, really busted. So I recommend pick up 4 of these as soon as possible. Like, this might be horrible advice. Like, once again, I'm not a pro at this game. I only recently got into this game, but Liminal Guide to me reads insane. And it's going to be one of the first cards I like pick up 4 of. And if the foils are super cheap day one, I'm just going to buy all the foils I can because I think this card's really, really good, especially if we're going into a meta where there's going to be lots of level 3 payoffs and a good mill deck. And speaking of mill decks, oh shoot. Speaking of mill decks, Lingering Banshee is another card I think is going to be pretty strong, depending on what other ephemerate, I hope I said that word correctly, exist in the sets. Because Genbu, I'm just referring this back to Genbu because it's the best, it's one of the better mill decks right now for like self-mill at least. This gives you more of an ally payoff, so you can go kind of from like having that wide variety of ways to win the game, which I think is honestly one of the best reasons of playing Genbu, is because they have multiple win cons, so it's hard to play around each one. But you can now change that to more of a focus on playing strictly allies in these matchups. And because you're in water, what's interesting about this ephemerate ability, as far as I can tell, you can activate this card at fast speed, because I don't think anything says otherwise about being able to play this. So like you can keep cards up and to interact with your opponent. They don't do anything. Now you just decide to dump your hand to summon banshees to the board instead, because you don't have to really interact with your opponent. So this is another card that I think is going to be pretty interesting to play around with. It's definitely one of the first things I'm going to be messing around with is a lot of graveyard related shenanigans. And once again, Liminal Guide here, it becomes ephemeral when it's on the board. So you level up, get this guy on the board, and then Recollection Step, you still get to play this guy out for 3, and then you essentially got it for free that turn. It seems like a very, very powerful combination, and I think that's something people should be aware of looking at into DTR if they're interested in playing the watermill stuff. I think the graveyard stuff in this set is going to be really interesting, at least in my opinion. All right, what other cards was speaking out to me that seemed really insane? I probably should have went through this before I turned on recording. This card here, I think this is probably I don't want to say this is the best common card in the set, but the fact that this is a common card is insane to me. So when you first read this card, if you don't really put much thought into it, you're like, this is pretty whatever. But this is an insane tempo card that Fire got access to now. I think this is going to be staple in any really aggressive Fire decks, and maybe even any Fire decks that kind of go long. This still could be really powerful. So let me explain the scenario why I think this card is so powerful. So first of all, it sucks that you take 2 damage yourself, but I mean, look at the cost of this card. It only costs 2 to do essentially 2 damage to your opponent, which is huge. Obviously, you do 2 damage to yourself, but the big payoff for this card is, one, obviously it's fast, which is insane, and banish target card from a graveyard. So you can do plays where you go to the end of your turn, you have 3 cards in hand, you pass to your opponent saying you're going to end turn. At the end of your turn, they play like Lost in Thought for 0 because they want to use the float, right? You let the Lost in Thought resolve, you get priority again, you play Ember Crypt Burn, and then not only do you push damage, you now banish their float, so they can't use a float to level up or get whatever regalia out of their deck. Another play you could consider with this card too is against like Frostthorn, for example, the most annoying card ever. A lot of people like to play Frostthorn and let it resolve, and then they respond to the on enter by like ditching Lost in Thought or another float, right? You let the Lost in Thought resolve with the on enter still on the stack. You respond to the on enter. You play this burn. You banish their float. Now they do not get the on enter to draw a card, and they took damage and they lost a card in hand. So like this card is gonna go insane. I do think this is a really really powerful card. I don't really poke my head a lot out into the like Discord communities that much. I honestly should a little bit more. But this card to me reads absolutely insane. I think this is going to be a staple in a lot of fire decks moving forward, especially obviously aggressive fire decks. I don't know if there's any really controlly fire decks, but I could see this coming in clutch in those decks as well too. Because the fact that at the end of the day, you got to banish a card at fast speed against your opponent is going to be really really annoying. And then rebuke still exists, right? So dealing 2 damage to yourself could potentially be dealing 5 damage to your opponent essentially, which will be pretty insane. I think this is a card, I guess, worth talking about a little bit too. It just makes it so people can't recover. Aggro burn decks are going to love this a lot. Probably Goja Fire deck is going to really like this a lot. Just any aggressive Dao Chan, even the Dao Chan deck, for example, they can't recover. Very, very big. I think healing in this game is actually pretty huge from my experience so far. Just healing 4 feels really, really powerful a lot of the times. Just because of how damage works in this game, you can't overheal ever. Like in Magic, for example, you start at 20 life, but you can heal up to like 40, 50, 1,000 life if you want. But in this, you can never go beyond like 0 essentially, because you count upwards to your max instead. So recovering in this game actually feels really powerful in that sense, because you do have a cap on how much you can actually recover and actually how much health you have. So I mean, I think this was pretty obvious. This is going to be a pretty interesting fire spell to have to play around. Healing might not be as powerful depending if this meta is very pushed towards fire, which I think from what I'm reading and seeing so far in the set, I feel like Weebs is doing 2 things in this set, or a few things in this set, not just 2 things. One is making Guardian better, because it seems like it's been a class that's just been, unfortunately, every time they release a Guardian card that was kind of good, other classes played it better. So they're really pushing the Guardian stuff. Another thing is Fire's been kind of not a real, I don't want to say not real, but it's been one of the weaker elements, I guess, since its past dominance. From what I'm told, it used to be one of the best elements. It was the fastest element. And it looks like they're trying to bring that back to form, giving it really, really powerful cards. So there's going to have better payoffs for being Fire, playing Fire in general. And it looks like they're just kind of, shoring that up a little bit more with extra damage, anti-recovery abilities, and stuff like that. So one of the other cards I would like to talk about more is the suited stuff, but I think without having all the information on the suited stuff, it's hard to like really gauge this stuff. I'm wondering if it's going to be a meme deck or not with like all the suited things. And they released like a Queen one today, like interesting. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. So keep an eye on that for the most part. This is another insanely powerful card too. It looks like they're leaning a little bit more into the Kindle mechanic, because there's another card as well as it should be here, I think. Where is it? Oh, here it is. This card essentially is like for payoff for playing Kindle cards. Essentially, is like anytime this banishes from your grave to pay for something or pay for reserve costs, this comes to the board. So you have a really good reason to play Kindle, and I think Kindle was already a really, I don't want to say broken, but it's a very strong mechanic. I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's called Delve in MTG. If I remember, Delve was a really, really strong broken mechanic because, obviously in this case, Fire gets to pitch a lot of cards very quickly. So anything that like interacts with the graveyard that way and like pays towards, you get to basically cheat mana essentially, or I guess reserve cost in this case. For cards, it's going to be really broken, and you get to pay off for cheating mana out. This is a card you buy 4 of day one. Just get 4 of immediately. I will be very surprised if this card doesn't like have like a minimum price tag like $10 each or something, like after a week or so, because I think this type of stuff is not healthy in the long run. But I mean, it's a 1/1, but at the end of the day, like 1 extra point for basically getting a free mana is insane. This card's kind of insane because if mill decks are very strong, or any decks that just mill in general or put cards in graveyard a lot, this is just going to be a pay 0, deal 6 damage to target champion. It's at fast speed. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty powerful card because it looks like they're trying to have more Kindle payoffs. Like I said, because of March Hare. Like I said, March Hare 2, this is a card you want to pick up. I didn't even check where it is. This is uncommon, so you don't have to worry too much. But I think this is also going to be another really powerful fire card worth just having. I don't know if it's going to be played in every deck. I don't know if it's actually going to be good enough because, like I said, kind of depends on the meta how quickly graveyards fill up. But if decks are going to level 3 in this meta, graveyards will get kind of chunky for sure. Let's see. What else is worth talking about here? I don't know if there's anything else I really want to talk about in fire. Is that it for those? Was there anything else in this element? Anything in Norm? No. Okay. Nothing else really spoke out to me a lot. Obviously, this card was interesting just because it became an omen by itself. Anything that speeds up omens is going to be really strong for the new Guardian. I'm interested to see how the Guardian actually ends up playing out. So I guess keep an eye out on this card, but it's just like uncommon, so it should be pretty easy to get a hold of. This was also really interesting because this is such a huge hate for Phantasias. This is going to be a really strong really strong sideboard card, I think, in a lot of decks looking to hate on Fantasia and win and stuff like that. So kind of watch out for this card, I guess. I don't know how powerful it's going to be. This is a super meta-dependent sideboard card. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But someone lost to Phantasias one too many times, and they got tired of it, so they printed this card. All right, Cosmic Alignment. So this is a card that's like kind of going back and forth, wiffle-waffing essentially, in my opinion on this card. I think this card sucks. I think this card is a trap. So my thought process here is that, one, you have to build up a really big glimpse. So I think the best thing we can look at really is like, the blue wand that comes in the Daria starter. We just imagine that being loaded up and swinging in after playing this and like drawing 10 cards. That's like the big payoff, right? The problem with that is like, this is a huge payoff. We're paying 6. If we play into any deck that has interaction with us, that means we have to have some way to protect this card too. Otherwise, we're just basically time walking ourselves that turn for no reason. The next thing is we're paying 6 to get like essentially random cards to our hand. Sometimes that could be enough to win the game, but if I'm paying 6 to like put my entire hand down, because essentially you essentially have to have 7 cards in hand, or like 7 or 6 reserve at least, and plus this card, reservables that is, to play this card, which means you're taking a gamble in a way to get random cards to your hand. Like I said, sometimes that's really good. If we have a very interactive deck where we have a lot of things we want to do on our opponent's turn, sometimes just getting a refill of like a bunch of cards to your hands isn't enough to win the game, but other times it's not. So this is like a card that you have to invest a lot into, and you don't get the immediate payoff of winning the game. Obviously, if this resolves and you do something crazy like draw 6+ cards, you're probably in a great position to win the game, and I'll be pretty surprised if you don't win the game. But it doesn't guarantee you to win the game every time. This is another card that like you have to untap essentially to really feel the power of this card at the end of the day. So I think this card's kind of a trap. Obviously, still going to test it out and see how it plays out, but this card, in my opinion, is a huge trap, because not only do you have to play into this glimpse thing, this glimpse war essentially, to be able to get a ton of cards to your hand. One of the other things too is like a lot of the good glimpse cards have payoffs for being glimpsed, and in this case you don't glimpse them, you just add them directly to your hand immediately. So instead of like being able to like do star calling or whatever, you now just draw the cards instead. So it'll be really interesting. Like I said, I think the best way this card is abused is if the deck has a lot of good interactions with your opponent on their turn, then this will have a really good payoff. Or I guess you're just really desperate to dig for like that last ink of damage you need to get through. One of the other things to worry about too is if Arisana becomes popular, her Cosmic Wand or whatever makes it so your opponent can only glimpse 3. If that card exists on the board, that means this card reads essentially pay 6, only draw 3 cards at most. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this card, but like I said, I will test it. You should test it too. Don't just take my opinion for or like as like gospel or something. I might make some good points. Maybe I'm making some bad points. But like I said, if I'm investing this much into a turn, I have to win off of it. There's like, I could be paying 6 to just like stratagem my opponent instead for the game. So why would I pay 6 to potentially draw a lot of cards? You know? Humpty Dumpty. I actually like this card a lot. I don't know how good it's going to be, but to me it reads amazingly. It reads great. It's like a card that like over time will just eventually take over the game. You just keep getting buff counters on this and glimpsing and glimpsing, glimpsing, fixing your hand, and then this card becomes like a five attack card or something, right? So a lot of times it like how I think this works in my head at least is like you glimpse during your opponent's turn or your turn, whatever. Most likely your opponent's turn is what you want to do it on. So you have a continued glimpse. So for example, in Arisana, you can keep glimpsing on your opponent's turn for essentially free while building up a threat on the board that they eventually have to deal with. So they don't have a way to interact with items or stuff under way or something like that. This is a ticking time bomb that will win you the game, even if you don't find your bolts, for example. Because you'll eventually keep glimpsing. Then on your turn, during Recollection, you can just turn this into an ally, get the cards back in your hand, and now you're swinging with like a 5+ attack ally after like glimpsing a bunch. What's really nice about this too is that because it's not an ally during its glimpsing, meaning makes it so that like any of your board wipes, like meteorites, meteor storm, or whatever they're called, they don't remove this card from the board. So it's a threat that keeps building up upon itself. I think this is going to be a really powerful card. I think this is an Arisana card at the end of the day. I don't know if I care. Well, I guess technically Diana could play this too, or Diana, whatever her name. I think it's Diana, right? I think I said Daria earlier. Either way, this is going to be a pretty powerful card in any Astra deck. So I think it's worth checking this card out, picking it up if you like playing Astra Element in general. And this is the type of card that wins games by itself. So it's going to be a very powerful card and worth having. This is the other reason that I'm like, is Fractal still a thing? Because like they just printed another one-drop Fractal. They did the smart thing and made it, an advanced element. But it has a really powerful on-enter effect. Worst case scenario is that it still comes into play from Star Calling and deals 1 damage with the on-enter. That's why I like this card a lot. I have ideas of like playing a water Arisana deck where I'm abusing my glimpses and I kind of use the fractals I make to like basically play the control game plan. So I start glimpsing and like slamming these to the board, and these are going to come in, do a bunch of damage over and over again. Same thing with like the Arisana Infinite combo. You can put out a bunch of fractals and you can set it up in the order you want because of how glimpsing works. So you can get you can set up these to come out first and then play all the rest of your fractals from your deck afterwards. And so the fractals you glimpsed and gave it Star Call from the combo, those will resolve first before these come in. So when these come in, they start chunking your opponent for like 10 damage each, and it's really good. And I think I mentioned it, but like worst case scenario, this still always comes in and does 1 damage because this will be in play when the on-enter is resolving. So this is a really powerful card. Obviously, I don't think you ever want to draw this card or play it from your hand. If possible, you want to Star Call it. So I'll be interested to see if this card becomes, played in Arisana decks or anything like that. It's a very interesting card, and I like the idea of it. I also, if it's Diana, I'm going to check right now. It's Diana, right? Where is she? Yeah, Diana. I must have said Daria by accident at some point. But I'd be interested to see if like there's a Fractal Diana deck that ends up being played, and this is part of one of the win cons. It's very. Was there another card here that I thought was insane? I'm not super sure on a lot of the Umbra cards really, because like I said, I don't really play. I'm new to the game. I didn't play a lot of Guardian, so please in the comments below let me know what you guys think about them. What Guardian cards are insane. This is a card I didn't get to read today, so I'll just do it now. Target unit becomes distant. Draw a card. Class 1 element bonus. Banish this card from your graveyard. Your champion gains stealth until end of turn. Prevent the next 4 non-combat damage that would be dealt to them this turn. Invisibility only if your champion is distant. That's interesting. This is an interesting card. I don't know how good it's going to be, though. It's nice that you have a way to distance yourself so Diana and other rangers can get that extra couple damage. Because, like, Diana does innately get the plus range 1 and range 1 at level 2 and 1, I think it is. So you'll be able to at least enable that and then, prevent maybe some non-combat damage coming through. And that might be enough to, like, win you the game. Stealth as well, making it so that you can dodge attacks. But yeah, this is an interesting card. I don't know how good it's going to be, though. It's one of those things once again, like these level 3 cards are very hard to tell. Like the cost in a lot of this stuff, I guess it kind of makes sense, but I always think advanced element cards need to read really, really broken, and maybe I'm undervaluing both of like all these effects here. But this doesn't always feel broken enough. But I guess if as long as you're able to go distant and draw a card, it might be good enough. Like I said, I haven't played Ranger before, so this will be a fun, interesting set for me. So these are like the URs and stuff. So this is the new Regalia, or Divine Relic, has Omni Shroud. So this is what enables you to be able to use the distortion cards. So this card's only going to be as good as the distortion package is going to be. So as we get revealed more, we'll know how powerful this Divine Relic will end up being in general. Cheshire Cat is really interesting as well. So once again, it's a distortion effect, but the fact that you get a double up on a lot of regalias essentially for having this card on the board. And what's interesting too is that a lot of the cost on all the regalia is just straight banish. You don't have to tap the card, which means Cheshire Cat can swing in, then you can sack it, banish it to do whatever extra effect you want as well. So not only are you getting bonus power from like having a distortion weapon on the board. So like for example, if you have the 2/2 sword on the board, this is now 3/3. So you get a swing in for 3. Then you can sack this and then like top check 4 of your opponent's deck. And none of the cost on here is like tapping it or anything like that. So you have to either choose to attack or use the effect. I'm surprised they kind of let you do that. But I guess that they want the distortion package to have a really good payoff, and this is probably one of the better payoffs of it, is that you get a double up on a lot of distortion effects. So it'll be interesting to see how this Cheshire Cat plays out in the end. I played Force of Will TCG for a while, and there was a Cheshire Cat in that game too that was pretty strong. So we'll see if that continues to be a thing. What was it? Ignis Duest? I don't know how to say this. This is another card that I think is like insane for fire decks. Like this is why I think they're really pushing for fire. This card could be the best card you draw or the worst card you draw. So this is a card I think will either see play or see no play at all. Or it might be like a random 1 or 2 of in a deck, because this is like the worst top deck you could ever ask for, but it's also like an insane effect. For example, like you're about to like lose the game and your opponent's swinging in for exact lethal and you just force a level up immediately. And you're a fire aggro deck, so you're probably only going to go to level 1 anyway. So this seems like a really, really powerful card in that sense. The fact, obviously, it's fast. Another thing too is that you essentially get another materialization phase if you main phase this or something like that too. So you can turn on your class bonuses much quicker with fire, kind of like how Wind can do with what was that card? The Wind. Oh, man, I can't remember any card names right now. But the Wind one that costs 3 and you get extra, you can materialize something. It's kind of like that, except obviously only for champions. So this is going to be an interestingly powerful card. Probably makes some fire decks insanely high rolly because this card exists. But I'll be very interested to see how this card ends up playing out. Like I could, for example, I can probably see this in like fire Dao-Chan decks, for example. Like imagine your opponent is like swinging for lethal or something. In response, you play this card, putting down a reaction spell, and you go to Dao-Chan level 1, and then you still respond after that with like the burn spell, the glimmering refractals or whatever, for game, or cycling a card as well. Like being able to do that at fast speed and having your opponent have to interact with that, it's kind of obnoxious. So I'm very interested to see how this card ends up playing out in general. This was the new card they spoiled today as I'm recording this video. I assume this is what they want their kind of like their payoff for playing the suited human stuff going on. I don't know how good this is going to be at all. It's very interesting that this gives all the other ones immortal, so it's going to be a very aggro deck in general. Obviously, fire, being able to fill up the graveyard and discard a bunch of things to get the reserve cost 10 pay for this instead of having to pay 10. I don't know if this payoff is good enough, but it is a good card. So like once you get bodies on the board and this gets resolved, I mean, the game's probably over, I assume, especially if some of those cards have like in or taunt or something like that. If you give one of those suited allies taunt, and now it's like they can never get to this card without having a spell. Seems pretty hard for your opponent to win the game from there. Having a mortality taunt would be really obnoxious. What was the other card? This was also really interesting. I'm not exactly how sure you can really abuse this card, because the second effect is really weird, where you can just lock people out of leveling up, essentially. So I'm wondering how this card's going to play out in general. It is a 3-cost 1/1, so obviously it's going to be really easy to remove and stuff like that. So I'm not sure. Like this is another interesting effect that they printed, and I'm very interested to see how this is going to be playing out. Right now, I kind of think it might suck, but I mean, there is a world where this is like insane, and yeah, the game's kind of over. And once this resolves and you can protect it, I guess, and you're constantly like forced their champion to be rested. Chrono Warp is another card too. Once again, like this is why I think Arisana might get really, really powerful. Chrono Warp is like one of those cards you only ever want to see one of when you do play the deck. So it being in a deck that's going to glimpse a lot is really, really good. So you can play something like 2 of, and then if you see an extra copy, just tuck it away and don't care about it anymore. But what I like about this card a lot is it obviously gives you 2 materialization phases for you. But the big thing for for Arisana is that when you have the last card in the deck, that one that requires you to have the last card, it has to be the last card you materialize. You can Chrono Warp that turn to still play that same turn. So because that thing comes in hindered, you kind of accelerated yourself 1 turn essentially to get out the infinite combo essentially. I think that's really interesting part about this card. Another thing too about this card is, for example, if you have ways to interact with your opponent on their turn, but you don't want them to materialize like Terrafring or not Terrafring, Safeguard Amulet or something like that during their turn, so you can actually deal damage to them through some kind of burn spells or something like that. This can force it so that they can't materialize their defensive spell or defensive regalia before you're able to really do anything, or before they're really able to do anything. Which means that they have to go into their main phase either holding up protection, meaning they can't play out their entire hand that turn, just to like kind of protect themselves until they get to their materialization phase, which will be after their main phase. So I think that's kind of interesting too, and I don't know how this is really going to affect the game a lot. It's just, obviously this is a new thing, changing the order of operations, essentially turn order of things. So I'm really curious how this is going to end up playing out in the end. But I think that right now, in my head, the biggest payoff for this is in Arisana, being able to get that extra materialization phase, that 1 turn, to be able to like jump ahead an extra turn, especially on the turn where you materialize the last thing to set up the infinite combo. Puts your opponent on, like, if they pass turn next turn, they just lose the game immediately, essentially. I think that's kind of it. I mean, I saw this card too. I'm not super impressed by this card, but it also could be really, really powerful. Once again, I think this kind of comes down to how this Guardian deck ends up playing out. This could become a really, really powerful Fantasia that people have to play around. Once again, it's like one of the unique mechanics to Seal. It seems like the longer the game goes, once they get to 5 omens, it's like they get infinite card advantage eventually. So like they can play for the long game because they're getting an extra draw every turn. And it's interesting that doesn't activate or isn't stopped by them not being level 3, if that makes sense. So that means like even at level 1, they could start drawing cards, more and more cards every turn. They swing in with a weapon. So maybe this Fantasia will end up being really, really powerful, because every time you play a card, they get a heal 1 and you take a damage. Eventually they'll win the attrition war that way, because Guardians have so much health. I think it's like 30 at level 3 or something. But yeah, I think that's kind of it. Let me know in the comments below what cards I missed that were worth talking about. Anything silly that I missed. Like I said, I'm still new to this game, so I'm not exactly sure what am I even what am I even missing essentially? Uh, there was just a lot of interesting talk in the beginning with like locals and stuff like that on some cards. I kind of like this Mad Tea Party card too, because just because the effect seems very very powerful for like prolonging game states. Anytime your opponent plays a card, an ally to the board, and you heal one, anytime you play something to the board, you heal one. Any flicker effects will cause this to hit, trigger and recover one. And the fact that this has 6 durability it's a lot to chunk through, right? While you're also recovering your opponent, or recovering whenever your opponent plays something, right? So it'll be interesting to see how good this card is as well. But I think that's kind of like wraps up what I like, my initial thoughts at least so far. I don't think I'm missing anything too crazy. I mean, this card also seems pretty obnoxious, but um one of the things about this card too, I think, is like kind of a double-edged sword, is that because there are good cards that want to be in the graveyard in this set, and there are other older cards that are really good payoffs, like Seaside Ringleader, just want to be in the graveyard. I don't think this will be as powerful as I initially thought, but I think it's really scary that there seems to be a lot of new discard cards, and I think it just feels bad in a lot of games, especially if it's random. Luckily, this isn't a random discard, so my assumption here is each player gets to choose the card they discard. But random discard feels miserable in card games. I don't like that type of stuff. But this seems like a fairly balanced card for the most part. It'll be interesting too if decks that play for the graveyard will play this as well if they play the new Divine Relic, just so they can discard cards into their graveyard. For example, what's her name? Genbu? Gojia? She has cards that she wants to discard a lot of times in the blue deck, in the water deck, that they don't have access to discard, but this can enable it. So maybe this is something worth looking at. You get to discard your dolphins. That when you draw through all 3 of your dolphins in your opening hand, now you have a way to discard it at least now. But yeah, very interested to see how this set's going to end up playing out. I think I will revisit this spoilers when more stuff releases in like a week or two. Do one more video, talk about it a little bit more. I don't know if people like having full set reviews in this game. If that's something you're interested into and you like this long form discussion of just talking about cards, I can get other people on too. Get some locals, get some other people I know. To come talk about cards, and we can kind of do a full set review if people want to hear opinions about people that like aren't amazing at the game. I guess I don't know, but yeah. With that being said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did like it, please comment, subscribe, all that stuff. It really kind of signals to me that this is like stuff you guys want to see in the future. I hope to do some more fun content too. I have some ideas that I hopefully will get done this week or next week or something, and get like some concepts out there. And maybe you guys will have some more fun content in the GA community to view and have fun with. With that being said, see you guys in the next video. Later, everyone.